Cheers! The bookshelves are done! Time to celebrate. Woo! Hey guys, welcome back. So, it's been a while since I've had books on my bookshelves. I embarked on a project a few months ago to redo my home office. So I redid the bookshelves, painted them all, attached them all together, painted them. Had to wait 30 days for paint to cure. Didn't know that was a thing, but now here we are. Finally, my bookshelves have books on them, and I'm so excited. So here we go. Here is a video of me putting my books on my bookshelf. So here we go, book organization time. So it mainly took me a long time to get all of my books actually into my office. So for the last about 4 to 5 months, all of my books have been sitting in my hallway in boxes. So I spent a lot of time just pulling them all out of boxes, and it was like seeing my old friends again. And I was very excited to see all of my books and to remember what books I had hidden away for so long. My plan originally was, I actually took a piece of paper and I drew my bookshelves out, and I wrote down where I wanted everything to go. So I was referring to my notebook page throughout, trying to organize my books. And I was wanting to originally organize by genre. So I wanted to organize by series, like fantasy, and then romantasy, and then romance. But then that also left me with, I don't know if I wanted to organize my special editions all together, or if I wanted my special editions to be mixed in with everything else. So that was kind of a hard decision. And then I decided, well, maybe I'll put all of my book of the months together. So I quickly stopped referencing my little cheat sheet that I made, and I kind of had to wing it and try to get a feel for what all I wanted to do. So after I got all of the books loaded into my office, it was overwhelming, and I had to do a wardrobe change because I was hot. It was a lot carrying boxes after boxes. I think I had like 7 boxes full of books, and books are heavy. So once I actually started unpacking all of my books that were in the hallway for so long, I actually ended up finding some special edition books from Owlcrate and Illumicrate that I had forgotten that I purchased. So it was pretty exciting to be able to see those. The books were hidden away for so long that books from the beginning of the year, probably back in January, I was like, oh, wow, I forgot I purchased you. So now I have a lot of the books that are actually on the shelves, and this is when I started to try to organize by genre somewhat, but it got to be very difficult because I would run out of room. So I tried to put all of my classics together, but as you can see, I ran out of room. So that's when I started. Then I also tried to put thrillers together. It was a mess. It was really hard organizing by genre. You wouldn't think it would be, but room-wise, it did not end up working out. So at some point here, I'm gonna start tearing all of these away, and then I decided maybe I'll try to do it by alphabetizing. So I'm still trying to organize by genre, changing my mind, trying to move, well, maybe classics will fit on the top shelf now. But you can see that I did put all of my special editions all together. I just like the way they look together. And it's funny because after I changed my mind again about genres, now that I've redone my bookshelf like a million times since this video, I filmed this, the special editions are now together, back again. But it took me a while to realize like that's exactly how I wanted to organize them. So you're gonna see I'm gonna start changing my mind a lot. But I did try to alphabetize within genre, but soon I'm gonna change my mind about that. The other problem that I had with organizing by genre is I couldn't quite figure out where some books would land within genres. So I have a lot of fantasy, but also romantasy, and a lot of romance, but romance with paranormal aspects. So I couldn't decide, okay, so what is fantasy? What is romantasy? What's romance versus romantasy? I had a lot of issues trying to figure out where to exactly put the genres of the books. So that's my other issue, is that I couldn't quite figure out how to do genre-wise. I think it'd be a lot easier if I had a lot more clear-cut books when it comes to genres. Like if I just had contemporary romance, or I just had thrillers, or I just had fantasy books. But a lot of the books that I read cross genre so much that it was incredibly difficult to organize by genre for me. And this is when I changed my mind and decided alphabetizing is the way to go. So you can see I am mixing up all of the genres. Genre no longer. Now it's time to alphabetize. And I quickly found out when it comes to alphabetizing that I don't know the alphabet. I was overwhelmed and I was drinking an entire bottle of champagne. And so I could not figure out where everything went in the alphabet. So I found the whole day during this day when I was doing this, I was just singing to myself the entire time. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Like I had to sing the alphabet so many times today. It was awful. I never knew that organizing my bookshelf would be so stressful. I was so excited to start organizing my books. I, got a bottle of champagne out and I was like, oh, this is gonna be just a fun few hours just organizing my books. And it turned out to be multiple days and I was overwhelmed. I think I put too much pressure on myself with being like, it has to be organized perfectly. I have to have a perfect plan for it. And I should have let myself just kind of take more breaks and realize that it's not going to be perfect and to let myself just have more fun with it. The other issue that I had with alphabetizing is, well, first of all, I would find a book that belonged in like the B's, but I already organized everything so that I would run out of room. So I'd have to shift everything down to try and fit the books that I missed. And then I kept going with it because I thought alphabetizing was the way I wanted to go. So you can see here, I missed a book. But I thought alphabetizing was the way I wanted to go, so I just kept rolling with it. But I didn't take into consideration, okay, so what happens if I get more books? I'm not leaving any space for future books. I was jam-packing my bookshelves, and I'm someone who buys books constantly. So this, in the end, didn't turn out to be a very feasible organization system for myself, just because I would have to shift books constantly every time I got a new book. It just didn't work out. But my advice would be, if you are starting completely from scratch with bookshelves, I would just put everything up on the shelf just so you can see everything and then start organizing. Because that was the biggest issue that I had, is I just had stacks and stacks of books all over my office floor. So I knew where nothing was and everything was just chaos. I did find that once everything was actually up on the shelves, I felt better about rearranging later because I knew what I had and I knew what I was looking for and I knew everything that I had. So I do recommend getting everything out in the open so you can see everything and then kind of tackling it that way. Wardrobe change again because this is the next day. So I finally finished alphabetizing the majority of my read books. And by the end of that Saturday, I was done. I couldn't look at books anymore. So I took a break and then I picked it back up the next day. And now I'm actually organizing my TBR shelf. And my TBR shelf is actually one of my favorite shelves that I have. And I had this before I had this new bookshelf set up as well. I just had an entire bookshelf that's dedicated to physical books that I need to read. So I wanted to do that again, of course, but again, I couldn't figure out how I wanted to organize them. And I had a brilliant plan to, let's organize it by author last name again. So I overwhelmed myself again by having too many stacks of books and having to hunt down all of the letters of the alphabet. So I did do that for a bit, and then I eventually ran out of space. So I alphabetized, and I think I got through maybe the G's or the J's, something like that, and I completely ran out of space. So I love having a full shelf of TBR just so that I can see everything that I need to read. If you have the space, I definitely recommend having an entire shelf that's dedicated just to books that you need to read. So for me, if I don't like the book that I've read, then I'm not going to integrate it into the rest of my actual bookshelf. So the first about 4 shelves that I have are all books that I've read and that I like and that I'm dedicated to keeping. But my TBR shelf, I don't want those mixed in, or I don't want my books I haven't read mixed in with the ones I have. Firstly, because I'm going to forget about them. I'm going to forget they exist and I'm never going to read them. But also, if I don't like them, I don't want to keep them and I don't want to integrate them into the rest of the majority of my shelf. So I do definitely love having an entire shelf that is just dedicated to, hey, you really need to read these. So at this point, I was alphabetizing by author last name, and I started running out of space. So I had to switch gears here a little bit. I had to completely redo what I decided to do for the TBR shelf, and I actually ended up liking where I shifted better. So instead of going by author last name, I just went by size and feeling. I just decided, okay, how can I get the majority of these books on this shelf and use the space up the best? So I found that stacking them horizontally or stacking them on top of each other, I could fit a lot more books in this tiny space versus having them all standing up vertically next to each other. I think you don't realize how many books you have until you're trying to organize them and get them to all fit on a shelf. And then you're like, oh no, I have way too many. Will they all fit? Let's try and figure out how to get them to fit. So again, I'm stacking them because I found that I can shove way more books on a bookshelf by having them all stacked like this versus just having them all standing vertically. And I'm happy I actually decided to do that instead of organizing by author's last name. I just like the way it looks. I like that they're all stacked and I think it looks nice. When I was all said and done with doing the entire bookshelf, when I went back through, I actually did end up just kind of organizing things by feel instead of organizing by author last name. I ended up just organizing by, oh, this looks good, versus having everything having to be perfectly in order. So now it is the night of Sunday. This project took so much longer than I originally thought it was going to. I thought it was going to take a couple of hours of my Saturday and it was going to be a fun couple of hours. And this ended up being an entire weekend project. It just was so much. I wasn't expecting it to be as overwhelming as it was. And as you can see here, I forgot more books. So that's why I decided to have books that wouldn't fit. So Pride and Prejudice, Frankenstein, and Secret Garden. Those were special edition books from Owl Crate that I had completely forgot about. They were in another box somewhere that I found, and then I didn't have room for them on that shelf. So I just decided, okay, you get to be front-facing books, apparently. But I actually did end up liking how they look with being front-facing, and I did end up, when I went back through with my bookshelves, I ended up making more books front-facing. I did find that it just did add some variety or some more like visually appealingness to the shelf. So nearing the end here, and I was so happy because this was the last few boxes I was unloading, and these are actually all of my Harlequin romance books. So I've started a collection of Harlequin romances and also romances that have step back covers. I just love them. I love going into thrift stores and finding these small, like, older romance books with these awesome covers that are like art, or they're like way over the top with like the Fabio covers. I just love them, and I've accumulated quite the collection of them. So I decided that the shelf next to my TBR shelf was just going to be an entire shelf that's dedicated to all of my small romances and my Harlequins and my stepbacks, just because I find them so visually appealing and I just wanted them to have their own little showcase. And the thing with those, though, with the stepbacks and the small romances, because they're so small, I have so many of them. So the nice thing about the bookshelves with how they're set up here is it goes back into the corner, so I could actually shove a bunch of books back into the corner and double my storage space. So a lot of these step backs are just kind of shoved back in the corner and then they're double stacked in the front. So that was kind of nice. I didn't run out of room for my step backs and all my romances because I could just shove them in the corner. That was the process. It took an entire weekend to put all of my books up on the bookshelf. It was overwhelming. I wanted it to be funner than it was. I had this grand idea for having a couple of hours on a weekend, putting my books on my shelf. It just didn't come together the way that I had originally anticipated. It was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. But in the end, I'm very happy. I got them up all on the shelf. I'm happy that I redid my bookshelves. A couple of days after I filmed myself putting books on the bookshelves, I couldn't stop staring at the shelves and I was like, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with the way that I decided to organize. Since then, I have been arranging and rearranging, and I think I have moved things around multiple times since I shot myself putting all of the books up on the bookshelves. Now I'm finally at a point where I think I'm happy. So that's where I ended up with my shelves, and now I am very happy with it. It ended up being more aesthetic for myself versus organization. If you are planning on ever reorganizing your bookshelf, I recommend just taking your time, having fun with it, not putting too much pressure on yourself, because if you're like me, you will redo it again and again and again. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye!